So I kind of thought, well, kids are going to really have to add to my life right now because it's already pretty good. Both my partner and I decided that it would be nice to have kids, but it also wasn't the be all and end all. And if it didn't happen, then we knew that we could still be really happy and have fulfilling lives.
This is the Bad Mothers Podcast, where we dive deep into our maternal urges or lack thereof. We talk about the mothers we left or who left us, and whether they haunt our own choices about having children. If you're a regular listener or reader of Bad Mothers, you know I adopted a puppy this year, and it has been a lot. It's been a lot for me, I think, because I'm an adamantly child-free woman, and because Annie demands all of my attention. It made me want to talk to other women who've made really thoughtful choices about whether to have children and how pets fit into those choices. As soon as I found Katie's Substack, I knew she'd make a great guest on this subject, and not just because she too has a high-energy border collie. But more than talking about life with a dog, Katie offers a special perspective on the expected touchstones of life as a woman. She writes Afterglow, a space dedicated to the other happy endings, the ones that don't end with a marriage, 2 kids, and a white picket fence, but are still full of joy, purpose, and meaning. After navigating divorce and 2 infertility chapters in her 30s, Katie shares essays that challenge the narrow scripts of womanhood and the silence around fertility treatment that doesn't, quote, work. Through honest storytelling, Katie explores what it means to step off the patriarchal escalator of life and create fulfillment, adventure, and connection on your own terms. Doesn't that sound amazing? I hope you enjoy this conversation, but please be aware we do discuss infertility. Okay. Thank you, Katie, for being here and for joining this conversation, this series of conversations I've wanted to have about women who also have dogs, but have different ideas about motherhood. And I was really drawn to your Substack and your writing about creating a happy life for yourself, even after IVF didn't work out for you. Mm-hmm. So thank you for being here.
No worries. Thank you for having me. It's really nice to talk to you, and it's great to build all these connections through a platform that I hadn't heard about a couple of years ago.
So you write that in your mid-30s, you were pretty nonchalant about having kids, but that you did always expect to have kids. So can you talk about that feeling, like what made you feel that way, that you expected to?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's like, I feel that until my mid-30s, I never really examined the choice, or I never really approached the decision with a lot of intentionality. I guess I just did always assume that I would have kids because that's what we see growing up, right? Like, we're probably about a similar age. I'm 40. So growing up in the 90s, mainly, in popular culture, the world around us, like all of our role models are mothers or families or parents. Like, obviously we're born into a family of some type. I was born into, a pretty typical family. My had a mum and dad and 4 kids. All of my friends around me were from pretty traditional families. And of course, in popular culture, in mainstream media, the books we read, the movies we watched, it is a bit, we do live in a really pronatalist world. And I guess I'd never really examined or questioned whether I really and truly did or did not want children for myself, like whether I really did want to be a mother, until I had been through the first infertility chapter in my early 30s, which with someone who we ended up splitting up for various reasons. It just wasn't the right match. But I did kind of enter that. I guess, attempt at having kids. Quite unintentionally. That is, I was just kind of on the escalator of life, and that's what you do. You get, you meet someone, you buy a house, you get married, and you have kids, which I think is quite, like, looking back now, I just think, well, I I identify strongly as a feminist. So it's not that I'm disappointed in myself. I just kind of thought, it's not that I really did want kids or I really didn't want kids. I just thought, well, that's what you do. So it wasn't until, I guess, going through a separation and then having that freedom to, I guess, really discover myself again that I guess, really started interrogating the choice with a lot more intention and purpose.
I identify strongly as a feminist as well, but I understand where you're coming from, not necessarily in with respect to having children, but I do catch myself in those sort of those traps of ideology, like this is what women are supposed to do. I feel like I've, done something wrong if I haven't made dinner for my husband. And I think, he's a grown up. It's not my job to do that.
Yeah.
Right. But I think we're so inundated with these ideas that it's hard. You have to really work at breaking free of it, even when it's something that you're engrossed in, for me, and as you said, for you, it's something that I think about a lot, but it's still hard to break those habits.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny you say the things, uh, making dinner for my husband. I guess all those domestic, I can relate to that, but also it's funny, like all the maybe more standard domestic duties that are considered, pink jobs or women jobs, which is ridiculous, really. I've always been really, and my partner now will attest to this, I don't hold any, I guess I feel really strongly that work in the home should be divided equally, right? Emotional labor, mental labor, um, work that needs to get done in the house. I will happily, pick up a drill just as I would expect my partner to, do traditionally, homemaking jobs. But when it came to the very biggest, I guess, decision, which was having kids, I didn't really think about it with a huge amount of intention. Yeah, as I said, until I was in my mid 30s.
And then when you did decide to have kids again, try again the
Mm.
second time,
Mm.
can you tell us
Mm.
how were you feeling then? Was it I definitely want this, or was it just sort of if it happens, it happens, and then it didn't happen, and then you decided to pursue IVF?
Yeah, so I think my my now partner and I, we met when we were 34. And obviously, I guess both having been in the wrong relationships before, we, I guess, certainly weren't rushing into anything. It was, I guess, more important to us that, and to me and to us. I'll talk from my point of view. It was more important for me to, I guess, just make sure that I was happy and the relationship was solid. And I kind of decided that I did spend a bit of time approaching the decision around, is this what I want? I guess I was kind of getting used to this newfound freedom, having kind of broken out of quite an unhealthy relationship. And I was really enjoying my life and, all of my hobbies, kind of, I guess, a bit of a self rediscovery. So I kind of thought, well, kids are going to really have to add to my life right now because it's already pretty good. And I guess both my partner and I decided that it would be nice to have kids, but it also wasn't the be all and end all. And if it didn't happen, then we knew that we could still be really happy and have fulfilling lives afterwards. Have fulfilling lives anyway. So that was kind of the mindset going into it. But then I guess the more once I'd kind of made that decision, and then when, it didn't happen, falling pregnant didn't happen, it's almost like once you start falling into this vortex of trying to conceive, it's almost like it really consumes you emotionally, physically, mentally, once you start pursuing fertility treatment, financially. So it's almost like the more I tried and it wasn't working, the more I wanted it at that point. And that's, I guess, what drove us to pursue fertility treatment, was I guess, yeah, that what I thought was I thought I was quite nonchalant about having kids, but once we started, I guess, trying to have kids and had a few early miscarriages, it really did make me think, oh, I actually do really want this. Um, and yeah, so I guess it does kind of consume you because the longer it goes on, I guess the more avenues there are to pursue in terms of like supplements, wellness, all, there's a whole wellness industry surrounding infertility and fertility, not to mention the whole, I guess, the medical side of fertility and infertility, and then navigating all the different treatment options, different doctors, different advice, plus all the noise in, I guess, the fertility industry that surrounds all of the actual medical part of it. So it's difficult for it to not consume you. So yeah, I guess being immersed in all of that, it kind of just, because it was requiring so much effort, I really wanted the outcome even more at that stage than I did before. So I don't know if it's not trying to get the thing that you really want so hard and not getting it that makes you want it more, or how much of that was kind of an actual deep yearning and longing myself versus how much was conditioning. It's really hard to unpick and unpack all of that, really, because we are a product of the environment and culture that we grow up in. But yeah, obviously it didn't work. We tried several different rounds of IVF and different types of treatment. And then we kind of got to the point where I just felt it was taking so much more from me, than it was kind of diminishing returns. And obviously anyone who wants to have a baby and is going through fertility treatment, if they have a child, of course it's always going to be worth it in the end. I'm not saying it wasn't going to be worth it if it had happened. But the chances of success for us were just so low once we really got into it and found a specialist who was transparent and honest about the success chances for us based on our age, on our histories, on our past cycle results. It was kind of like a 9 or 10% success rate, or that's, I think, even just a pregnancy rate, not even a live birth. And for about 10,000 Australian dollars each time, and we had done several cycles. At some point, we just decided to call it quits on that, because you also hear stories of people that have done 10 rounds or 12 rounds or 15 rounds, and you always hear of the miracle baby endings, which it makes it really hard to know when to stop, because you don't hear the stories of people who stop. So we did decide to stop, and I guess pursue a different type of life. So I kind of went, through the space of my 30s, I went from kind of unintentionally thinking, yes, I'll have a family, to that not working, getting out of that relationship, being really happy in my newfound freedom and being single, and then meeting my partner and enjoying this wonderful new life, first as a single person and then with someone who I guess is a much better partner and have building a much better life together, to then thinking, at 36 or so, okay, let's have a child. It'll be great if we have a child. And I think maybe also being with the right person, and I knew he would be a really great dad, probably had a part to play in that as well. And then I guess approaching the decision to try to have kids with a lot of intention, and that it to not happen was quite a lot to process, and has been quite a lot to process.
Yes, I can imagine that is quite a journey in the
Yeah.
decade of your 30s. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned how you get stuck in this whirlwind vortex of things about having a baby. So you said like the supplements, I'm sure you saw like all the ads on social media, and I get the ads just
Yeah.
because of, I think, my age range. Um, and yeah, it seems really unfair to like inundate
women with those things, especially if they are struggling to pursue, a life that they really want. How did you sort of break free of those things and focus in on, what was most important?
Yeah, I guess, it's tricky, right? Because I have a marketing background, so I would like to think that even I can kind of filter out what's a legitimate claim and what's an illegitimate claim. But it's it's really hard once you are really emotionally invested. You kind of do almost want to give anything a try. And if there is, and the whole wellness industry, I think there is a lot of really well-intentioned products or providers out there, but then there are also some that are incredibly predatory, like it's preying on people at their most vulnerable. And I know that this doesn't just exist in the fertility space, it exists in the health space more broadly. So how did I decide on what was right for me? I guess I just made a decision. I guess I found a medical practitioner I could trust. I started working with a mindset, like a certified qualified mindset coach who has experience in fertility, who I trusted to, I guess, just focus on what I really wanted and what was reasonable to me to pursue. Because you can spend tens of thousands, you can spend hundreds of thousands on this, and there is no guarantee. Like if a coach will tell you, there's fertility coaches that will tell you it's your mindset block stopping you from getting pregnant. People were telling you that like yoga or meditation, guarantee a child. There are actually, providers and businesses out there that make those claims, which I do find incredibly predatory and also quite victim blaming as well. So I don't know, perhaps kind of the fact that I had approached the decision with a lot of intentionality, I'd made the decision that a life with kids or without kids could be happy. And so whilst I was getting quite emotionally invested, I was always kind of reminding myself to like level up, so I could try and identify what felt reasonable to me to pursue or not pursue and what I would be comfortable with.
You mentioned how just now how there weren't any stories like yours. You always just hear the stories of the miracle babies, and that sort of motivates women in your position to just keep trying and keep trying. And
Yeah.
that's where your Substack comes in, Afterglow. And I think that we, in a lot of ways, we have really come a long way when it comes to being honest about like how hard motherhood is and how traumatic birth can be and miscarriages and those sorts of things that not that long ago we couldn't really talk about. And it can definitely be better. But why do you
Mm.
think that unsuccessful IVF is still not widely discussed?
I think there's a few different lens to look at that question through. I think from from the person's perspective, I think it can be quite, I guess, going through infertility. I think there's a lot of medical trauma that can be involved there. So obviously, I can only talk for myself, but it can be quite difficult. I personally don't find it too difficult to talk about because I am motivated by the drive and the need I see for more of these stories out there. But I imagine that it could be potentially really difficult or traumatic for some people to speak about because there is so much grief involved in being childless. I don't identify as childless. I actually don't really like any of the labels surrounding non-parents. I definitely don't feel less than, but I think people who do identify as childless, that's an important word to them because it represents the grief they're feeling. So I guess if you're in this space where you're really grieving, and I'm not to say I don't feel grief at not having something that I did try really hard to have, I do at times feel that grief. So that's potentially one reason why there's not more stories out there. I think so that's, I guess, from if we're looking at the people who have been through IVF or infertility or any kind of path to being a parent that didn't work out. And then potentially from the medical side of things, like if we're talking about medical clinics or treatment clinics who provide services. Now, I don't know what it's like in the UK or the States. I know in the UK there's the NHS and then there's also private clinics, but in Australia, IVF clinics are predominantly commercial businesses that are privately funded. I'm not an expert on IVF regulation, but I do know that, I guess, operating as a commercial business means that the more money you make, the more profit there is for shareholders. They are required to publish their success rates, but it is a really murky space because you are presenting at a clinic for treatment that will hopefully result in a live birth of a child. So I guess what is the role of clinics then to, I guess they say based on your age or this, your history, here's the success rates, but some of them are there's variability as to how upfront they are with that information at the beginning. And I went to a few different specialists at a few different clinics, and it actually took our third complete egg collection IVF cycle for the specialist to say, look, based on now where you are, here's your success rate. And I guess having that information up front would have been a bit more helpful. So I'm kind of going a little bit off track there, but I guess what I'm saying is it's not great marketing for a clinic to go, they're going to say you have a 50% chance of success or a 30% chance. They're not going to say there's 80% chance this isn't going to work out for you. You know what I mean? And here's all the stories of people that it didn't work out for, because they're trying to sell. They're trying to make money at the end of the day. And I do believe that many of the clinicians and the specialists, of course, they really do want to help patients have a child. And then, so I guess there's the human side, the people who have been through the experience of the medical side. And then I think from the wellness industry side, as we were talking about before, there is a whole industry, there is a whole wellness industry around infertility. And talking about the stories where it doesn't work just isn't good for business, So that, I guess that's my perspective on why people don't talk about it more. Like there definitely are, there's communities and spaces that where these conversations are being had, like, communities and spaces for childless people, but definitely the broader, in the mainstream fertility community or conversation, there definitely isn't enough focus on the stories where it doesn't work out. And there are lots.
Yeah, and I think the thing that is special about Afterglow, your Substack, is it's a story about it not working out and you still have a happy life, right? It's not just about your grief, which maybe would be a useful model for people who are grieving to maybe see an alternative. You wrote what I thought was my very conscious, rational decision to have a child free from any social conditioning and people pleasing was being taken away from me. Infertility was robbing me of the right to make that choice. So we've already talked about the social conditioning, so I won't ask about that again unless you want to add. But I was intrigued by your word choice, that it was robbing you of your right to make the choice. And I think that really brings in ideas of reproductive justice more generally, right? Being able to have children, but also being able to not have children. And it's so much part of the reproductive discourse when it comes to abortion rights. So did your experience, has it colored your position on other reproductive justice issues?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we quite often hear the word choice around reproductive freedom and abortion rights, and I am absolutely 100% pro-choice and have always been and will always be pro-choice. And I think that's kind of part of my identity, how I identify as a feminist, that it is a woman's right to choose whether to have a child or not, whether she wants, it's her body, it's her choice. But similarly, I guess, and this is where it's such a bit of a head screw, is that you you don't think that choice, you wouldn't associate the word choice with, the choice is being made for me. I guess when I wrote that, what I meant was that I had made a choice to have a child, which I thought was my choice, free from any kind of conditioning or people pleasing. And like we said, how can you really untangle the true desire from conditioning? But then obviously, but having infertility, it was unexplained infertility even, it kind of really, it was a real juxtaposition to try and grapple with, because that's what I meant when the choice was taken away. I thought, I've made this choice, we'll try to have a baby, we'll go through treatment and we'll get the baby. But that didn't happen. So that's kind of what I meant when I guess the choice was taken away, which is just the reality of it, really. Like it doesn't always work out. And I guess that's why I'm so passionate about writing about it and building community around it, or raising awareness of when it doesn't always work out. And that is not a sad story. You know what I mean? Like, obviously it is a sad story. It is a sad story if it's something you wanted and you've been through really difficult times and hasn't happened, but it doesn't mean that the rest of your story is sad. Do you know what I mean? And I just kind of felt that many of the kind of stories or examples or narratives I could find around going through infertility and trying to have a child and it not working out did seem to be quite focused on the grief of it. And that just didn't, I guess I was looking for more inspiring and positive and uplifting stories. And maybe it is because maybe I'm more drawn to that because I guess I had approached the decision to have a child with a lot of intentionality and had already decided that I could have a happy life either way. Although I did kind of, veer into that emotional vortex of wanting it really hard, which is once you kind of start, which I think is quite impossible not to. But I guess maybe that's what made it a bit quicker or faster for me to kind of move through that initial shock and grief and processing that it wouldn't happen, to then be able to more quickly accept and move then on to kind of building the future.
Actually, the thing I do know about IVF in the US is that the practice is under threat from reproductive what's the word, pro-life in quotes,
pro-life
activists who believe that the practice destroys life, right, just in practice of not using all of the embryos. So that might be a more limited option for women who want children in the future. Hopefully not, but
let's hope not. Yeah,
there's so many things tied up in that idea of choice, right? Choice to have children or to not have children. And those rights are being limited for basically for reasons from the right, but it's limiting having children and not having children, which doesn't seem to make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, right? It's like, do you want to grow the population or not?
I was interested in talking about how dogs are like or unlike children. Obviously, they're not like children. I understand that. But I adopted a puppy this year and it was completely overwhelming. And I noticed that you have a dog and you've written very lovely things about your dog. So I just wondered how she fits into this new outlook, if at all. Does she play a part and does she help, fill any sort of like maternal void in any way for you?
Yeah, I would say, so we've had our current dog now. We've had her for a bit over a year, about nearly 18 months. We actually got her, we were in the middle of our final IVF cycle last year. But before we had her, we did have another dog who, passed away about 6 months before that, so about 2 years ago now. So I've always, for most of my adult life, I have had a dog. And I wouldn't say that it necessarily fills a maternal void for me, although I can't speak to being a mother of a human. But I think there definitely are a lot of parallels. But I guess I have a dog and have always had dogs as pets because I just feel they bring so much joy into someone's life. And it's you get home from work, first of all, you can leave them for 8 or 9 hours a day at work and child protection won't get called. Which I don't love leaving her at home alone for a whole day. But you can. And dogs are always just unconditionally happy to see you. They offer so much connection. They offer so much love and so much joy. And the period of time between when our older dog died a couple of years ago to when we got our puppy 18 months ago, it felt really lonely. It felt incredibly lonely. And I think, so I guess it wasn't like I didn't get a dog because motherhood didn't work out. I guess I have always had dogs and will always have dogs. I guess, does it fill a void? I think potentially it probably does. I think even, how I just said that, the 6 months or so that our home didn't have a dog, it felt really empty. So it probably does, I guess, then feel some kind of a caring, I wouldn't say void, but it does, I guess, fulfill some type of a desire to care for another living thing. And to have a responsibility for another living thing and to teach another living thing. And, I'm by no means comparing or saying that I guess the two are the same because they are absolutely not the same. But I think a dog or a pet can absolutely feel a need for some type of caring. And it's not that I've got a dog because I couldn't have kids. I have a dog because I love dogs. And I think dogs are awesome. They are. You said that you've been quite overwhelmed by having a dog, and I can really relate to parts of that. Actually, before we had our chat, I did listen to your chat yesterday, your podcast with oh, forgive me, I forgot her name, but she's the coach
Kelty McGuire.
Yeah, and I heard a little bit of your conversation with her, and you're saying how you're quite overwhelmed with just the neediness of a puppy. And when we got Mochi, her name's Mochi, when we got her last year, that was the first time that I had a puppy. So my previous dog, I adopted him when he was about 1 from a rescue. So he was toilet trained and, wasn't destructive. Whereas I think having a puppy and raising a puppy is definitely something that I thought I was prepared for, but I think nothing can really prepare you for it, and talking to friends who have kids, and have had puppies, they have validated my feelings and said there are a lot of similarities between toddlers and puppies. Again, not saying they're exactly the same, like you can't leave a toddler for 8 hours a day, you can leave a puppy for 8 hours a day. But yeah, it's intense. Having a puppy is intense. And whilst she was adorable and incredibly cute, my partner does like to remind me that there were times where I was virtually in tears at frustration around how long she was taking to toilet train, the destruction she was causing to the backyard. So I'm very happy now that she's matured a bit, and she's mostly grown out of the puppy stage. But, in saying that, I would go through that all again. I would go through that all again. It's definitely worth it.
I'm relieved to hear you say you had a similar experience to me and you would do it again, because at the moment I've said to Chris, we're never getting a puppy again, never a puppy.
Oh no, how old is your dog?
Well, we got her at 11 weeks. And Yeah, it's just been, I've had dogs before, but I've never had a puppy. And as you said, I was
Mm.
just completely unprepared for the fact that I needed to pay attention to her basically 24 hours a day unless she was sleeping. So it's been hard, but it's getting better. And that's what sort of
Oh,
spurred these conversations. And for me,
yeah.
there are moments, I should say, I love her very much. I'm very happy to have her. But there are moments that remind me of the reasons I don't want children. I can't just, go off whenever I feel like it or do what I want. But I wonder if you sort of experience this in reverse, where as you said, you can leave your dog, you can leave it and go on a nice holiday or just go to work or run out to the shops, which I can't do at the moment. And you can't do that with a baby, obviously. So I
Mm.
wonder if you have sort of a reverse experience to me, like you can leave your dog. And do you ever think, well, if I had a baby, I wouldn't be able to do this?
Yeah, no, not really. I feel, if anything, it's given me appreciation. I, like I said, I definitely, there's moments where I do, still feel waves of grief, and I'm sure I will probably for a really long time, for the rest of my life, around not having kids. But I think having her isn't a reminder of that. If anything, it's a reminder of how much harder it could have been. So it's quite validating, really, having had a puppy. So I can understand how you feel, because even when she was tiny, I could leave her at my peril, but she didn't. She wasn't. I could pop out to the shops and it would be okay. She might upturn a pot plant or something, or eat a shoe. I think I had. I'm not a big shoe person, but the shoes I do have, they're not. I've got a small collection of shoes that I quite value that are not, cheap. And she, in one day, in 40 minutes, while I was having a nap, when she was about 4 months, she ate not two shoes in one pair. She ate three single shoes from three different pairs and destroyed
No.
three pairs of shoes. Yeah. So I think that was probably a low point.
One of the times that you cried. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. One of the times I cried. She doesn't do that anymore. I can leave the cupboard door, forget to leave the cupboard door open, and I can be 99% sure she's not going to do that. So I'm not sure how old Annie is now, but there is hope. So I think if anything, it doesn't kind of have the reverse effect in terms of make me want kids more. I think it just, yeah, I don't know, maybe getting a puppy around the time that our final IVF cycle didn't work, it probably did. I think it was a really big, I wouldn't say distraction, but like a sponge for the grief and the feelings to absorb, because all of our attention and energy was going into her. So it was like a wonderful redirection during that stage of our lives last year, when we were coming to terms and accepting that hadn't worked. And we had made the decision before going into IVF around how much we would pursue and for how long. So we were kind of ready for it to end when it ended. So I think getting her at that time was definitely like a really good, she absorbed a lot of those feelings. And if we want to say it, yeah, I wouldn't say she filled the void, but it was very therapeutic, I suppose. And now, I guess her being a bit more mature, I just see she adds to my life in the same way that my previous dog did. Like, I love an outdoor lifestyle. I've got an active dog. She's a border collie. We live near the beach. We take her for runs on the beach every day. We take her away with us. My partner plays disc golf. He takes her to disc golf. Like, she just kind of fits really wonderfully into our lives, and it almost does feel a little bit more like a family unit. Whereas, like it did when we had our last dog, and then those 6 months that we didn't have a dog, it felt a bit lonely and quiet. But now it feels complete again.
absolutely. Annie's a border collie as well, so this
Oh, is
conversation
she?
has
Oh,
really made me feel better.
oh.
Thanks.
How old
I
is
hope.
she?
She is 7 months now.
It will
Yeah.
get so much better.
Yeah. She
It's
is
like,
getting a lot better. All the time she's getting better, so.
have you, I'll send you the details afterwards actually. There's a really good border collie page. You might already follow it. She's a trainer that I
Okay.
found incredibly helpful for border collies. But there's, you've seen, I don't know if you've seen like memes on the internet for border collies that show like 0 to 4 months. They're these cute, really cute little puppies. And then 4 months to 12 months or 4 months to 18 months, it's like a T-Rex. And then from 18 months onwards, it's like the dog you imagined.
Okay. All right. So I just have to make it, yeah, a few more months. Not that long.
Oh,
Yeah. A year, I guess. But yeah, I
yeah,
am looking forward to that. And I deliberately wanted to adopt a puppy because our last
mm,
dog we adopted when he was quite old already. So I felt like we didn't get a fun stage. We just got a
yeah,
stressful, sad stage. Um,
yeah,
so this is what I wanted, and I have to keep reminding myself of that. So,
yeah. And I imagine that, and I look, I can relate to that a lot. Yeah, and I imagine that that might be how mothers feel as well. Like a lot of mothers who probably unintentionally fell pregnant, or even those that maybe weren't prepared for how hard it might be. Like I know I've got people in my life who are parents who really struggled in the first year or two. So I think having a puppy and a dog is not a small task, especially in these young years. And obviously I'm not a parent, but I think as I said before, I've got friends who are parents and have dogs and have validated those feelings for me, which made me feel a lot better.
yes, yes, same for me. So that helps. It does help people are understanding. They don't look at me like, what's wrong with you? You can't manage a dog. So,
Yeah, they're like. In fact, I've had friends who've I hope they weren't just being kind, but have said, "Oh no, sometimes the puppy was harder than the toddler."
yes, yeah, I've heard the same thing. So I think it's true. It's fair
Yeah,
enough.
yeah, we'll go with that.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you so much for making the time to have this conversation.
Oh, thank you, Monica. Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you, and thank you for inviting me on. Yeah, and thank you for, I guess, offering the opportunity to talk about, different ways of mothering, and also
Mm.
stories of when IVF or wanting to be a parent doesn't work out.
Yes, I think sharing our stories is so important because
Mm,
it makes we're not alone in these feelings. So I think the more we
hmm.
share and talk about them, the better everyone else feels and the more, validated and stronger we are for it. So I really have enjoyed Afterglow, all that I've read so far. I look forward to more.
Thanks, Monica. It was nice to talk to you.
Bad Mothers is written, produced, and edited by me, Monica Cardenas. I'd love it if you'd rate and review the show and get in touch with any feedback. You can find me on my Substack, and guess what? It's called Bad Mothers too.